Okay, good evening everybody, and welcome to the second part of the four-part series which we call Towards a Meaningful Life. We hope that at the end of this series you'll be able to go home and live a life to its fullest. As if you don't have enough now, we want to add on a few other things just to make it interesting. So last week we talked about the makeup of a Jew, of what really a Jew is made up of, and we talked about how a Jew is really schizophrenic in a bit, because he has two different parts to them. We have the evil inclination, or we call it the nefesh abahamis, the animalistic soul which resides in the left ventricle of the heart. And the right side, we have the nefesh alekis, the godly soul, and these two forces are continually doing battle with each other. And every day we have all of these kind of conflicts that we have to make decisions about, and based upon our experiences and our upbringing, our education, hopefully we make the right decision most of the time. I wouldn't say all of the time, because only a tzaddik, someone that's completely righteous and without even an evil inclination, makes the right decision all of the time. But for average people like us, like, the average guy who's, does a little good things and a bit more better things, we hope that we can make good decisions. Tonight we want to focus on the beginning. Okay, the beginning of life. Birth and childhood. And how, in the beginning, now, we've already passed childhood, most of us. Unless, we want to think of ourselves as always being children, because, there's the old expression, you don't stop playing games because you grow old because you stop playing games. So no, it's always good to be active, and it's always good to be childish in a certain dimension. You don't want to come into shul and act like a child and roll around on the floor. That's not going to do any good. But you have to have that joie de vivre. You have to have that kind of love of life like children have. And tonight we're going to talk about where it all begins and how early on, and since we're already past that stage, but maybe we have children who are young, or we can even start to take some of these ideas and to integrate it into our lives. When a child is born, God goes up to heaven and he goes into the hall of souls. There's a hall, big, huge hall. And all the souls hang out there. They eat there, they sleep there. It's like a big dormitory for souls. Okay? And he goes there and he looks around the room and he says, okay, you know what? Number 74, I want you to come here. And 74 goes, oh my God, why? Probably doesn't say, oh my God, in front of God, but let me use another expression, oy vey. He probably says, and God says, come here, I need something, I want to tell you something. He says, I'm sending you back to earth. Oh, the soul cries, vay, I don't want to go, please, I was just there, it's hard. God kicks him out of heaven, and he flies down the chute, and he ends up in this baby's body, okay? And he is fighting all the way. He doesn't want to go. Now, why doesn't he want to go? Why? Because it's a tough job here, right? It's a very, very difficult job. Because most human beings, as we talked about last week, relate to the materialistic world. We relate to size, we relate to physicality, we relate to materialism. We love our cars, our homes, we love our food, we just love living, right? We love all the physical things about living. What is the soul's job? To get us and painfully try to break into our psyche this idea of spirituality. Forget about the love of food. You're supposed to be love study, love the Torah, love doing good deeds, give away your money, don't worry about worldly possessions. Is that easy? Oh, yeah. So the soul cries, and the shama yeredes letoich haguf. The soul enters into the body. Ach chayekes vai. But she screams, woe is to me, woe is to me. Till it realizes that the whole Yerida Zu, that this descent, Tzoyrech Aliyah, is because of the ascent that's going to come later. Ad shekol zehu kedai, until the entire matter is well worth it. So in the beginning, Bal Korcha Atachai, in the beginning the soul comes into the body forcefully. It makes the body live. Later on, when it comes back after 70, 80, 90 years, it comes back to heaven, and it comes and God applauds it. You did a wonderful job. and he gives him a medal, and he come up there, big kiddush. He throws for number 74, and he says, I wanted to introduce everybody. He was just down on earth for 90 years, and he was in the body of such a shmendrik. I'm telling you, I gave him a tough job. I didn't give him an easy job. I didn't send him into the Rambam, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Moses. I sent him to a shmendrik, like Perelmuter, and he had to work so hard, but he's back, and everybody gives him a standing applause, and then, instead of going back into the Hall of the Souls, he gets a very special seat because he did such a good job. And then he realizes that the entire struggle, all of the struggles down here on earth, every day that he had to pound away and pound away and pound away, was well worth it. Because the reward afterwards is so great. Okay? So that's what we know. So early on, a baby is born with these two inclinations. But the soul was fighting all the way down until it came into the body, and then it led us. A person then begins to realize that every single child in the world, every single child is a chosen child, is chosen. That God chose this body, not anybody else, but this exact body for this exact soul. So a person has to realize early on, we only really understand this, but every child must be told that you are special. Now, of course, we tell that to our children. Every child, we tell them you are special. No matter, you can have one child, you can have 16 children. You tell every child you're special, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're number one. But we have to believe that. You have to make the child really, really believe it. And we have to believe it, that there's nobody else in the world, nobody in the world that could take our place. That there's nobody like Perelmuter, and there's nobody like Paul, and we are here unique, and we are needed. And God himself chose us. He said, I want this child to be born. Because why do we need to feel that way? Because we're going to be on a mission. God has given each and every single one of us a mission that we have to accomplish through our days here on earth. Now, if we think that we're just one of the pot, right? So if I don't do it, hey, you'll do it. Bob will do it, someone else will do it, the other guy will do it. But if I realize and I know that I'm the only one with the key that's able to open up the door, or the only one with the plans that is able to move ahead the world one step, then there's no way I'm going to rely on anybody else. I know I have to do it. Think of it as being in an army. In an army, everybody has a job. Who makes that decision? Not the private. Does the private say, okay, you know what, today I think I'm going to walk this way. I'm going to stand over here and guard here. And tomorrow I'm going to guard over there. No, it's the general that sets everybody up. And the private has to follow orders. Whether he likes it, he doesn't like it, he understands it, he doesn't understand it. But a good sergeant and a good lieutenant and a good captain will make him feel that he is unique. That the war cannot be won only with you. You are an integral part of this army and an integral part of this effort, and you and only you can we win. When a person starts to believe that, when a child is told that over and over again, that Hashem himself chose you and chose your neshama for you, a very special neshama, the child begins to realize at an early age that it has a very special mission. Because don't forget, besides being a good person, which itself sometimes is challenging in America, the old expression, "Sheshver zu sein a Yid," it's very hard to be Jewish. Why? Because our efforts and our values will always be challenged. It'll be challenged. Why, Daddy, do we have to drive up to LA to eat kosher? Why can't we just stay down here? You know, there's so many good places here. There's Schlepsach over there. Come on. You know, all of these things. And when you send your children to school, many don't go to a Hebrew academy, many go to a public school. If you're in public school, the children look at you like you're kind of weird, you're a wacko. How come you wear those fringes? What's with the fringes? What's with the payas? Why do you wear a yarmulke? Why do you do this? Why can't you come to my house? We're having a Christmas party. Why can't you come? Okay, so if a child is raised early on and told, you know what, you are a member of something very special, the child begins to feel good about themselves and is proud of who they are, then any challenge thrown their way, we have with they'll be reasonably successful. But if a child is told, you know what, You were a mistake. What could we do? Okay, mommy got pregnant. You're here. Okay, no, so we have to raise you. And loyalenu, sorry to tell you. Okay, so what chances of success is that child going to have in its mission? Not well, not many, not much. So one, we have to remember that we are chosen, and we have to relay this message to our children, to our friends, to everybody, to understand that you are a special individual and unique, and nobody else is like you. Even though you may be one of 10 children in the family, but you are unique. And if you look at families with multiple children, you will see that this is very true, that there are no two children in any family that are exactly the same. Even if they're identical twins, there are differences in the two personalities, and each child needs to be nurtured and raised and cared for in their own individual way. What works for one child does not work for another child. What works for, sometimes you've got to be tougher with one and push it a little harder. The other one you have to ease off a little bit and more nurturing, etc., etc. Which brings us to the next section, to the next topic, because we have this old discussion, nurture versus nature, right? What makes a human being? You're born with certain natural tendencies. Some are born to be very smart. There are kids that are naturally bright. You see them in preschool, you see them already, butze mekatni yediyah. There's an old expression in the Zohar that a little child already reflects everything it's going to be future. In the future. At 5 years old, you already see what's going to happen. You already know what's going to happen. The old expression from Sigmund Freud was, when the mother came to ask him, he said, Dr. Freud, when should I start educating my child? And Freud's answer to her was, when is the child going to be born? Okay, and the other version of it is, my child is 5 years old, and he said, you're 5 years too late. You're 5 years too late. You should have started educating in the womb. That's when you start educating. And not at 5, certainly not at 10. We think, oh, definitely not at 21. That's for sure, I can tell you that. For sure. It starts when you're 21 days old at the bris. At the bris, you have to start educating your child. Why? Because early on, we're going to find exactly what makes up that child. Now, again, there are certain children that are by nature, have already certain personality traits. Like I said, brains, if again, you're Rabbi Soloveitchik, you're born into the Soloveitchik family, he's a great rabbi here in America, he was the head of the Yeshiva University, a brilliant scholar. Early on, when he was a little kid, they identified him as being a genius. Fine. Okay, so great, he's a genius. Okay, and there's other kids like that too. Einsteins, little Einsteins. Every Jew's a little Einstein, right? You ever see a Jew that's not an Einstein? Every Jew, every kid, everyone is brilliant, smart, beautiful, the best, all the best. But if we take away the trappings, we know that there are some children who are naturally bright, some children who take it a little bit slower, some kids who have this ability to recognize a problem quickly, other children have this ability to retain longer. There are people that are very quick to grasp something. You say something, they grab it right away, but they can't remember it. I mean, it's quick in, quick out. Others take a little bit longer to understand what the issue is, but once they understand it, they got it and they retain it and they hold it. Now, so those are different traits among children. And each child, hopefully, is able to be nurtured, and this is where nurtured comes in, and this is where the real important part. So if you see that you have a child that's brilliant, or you see you have a child that has a certain talent, it's incumbent upon us as parents, as individuals, as guardians, to nurture that. It doesn't only have to do with children. Believe me, running a congregation is the same way. It's a bunch of kids. Believe me, a rabbi's job is no different than a preschool teacher. Okay? Because with some congregants, you got to push a little harder. You got to say, hey, you know what? Come with it. Some you have to ease off. Some you have to cajole. Some will be happy with the l'chaim. Some is going to be happy with classes. Some will be happy with this. Each one, and a happy congregation, is that everybody in this room has different needs. Nobody here in this room has the same needs. Everybody has different needs. And a successful congregation is when we could fulfill the needs of most of our congregants to a certain degree. Not going to fulfill every congregant, every need that they have, but the more you're able to fulfill and the more people can start relating to you, and that's no difference than a preschool. That's if a child is nurtured and is happy and is coming to school and he feels fulfilled, then he's going to love education. But if he feels frustrated, whether he's too slow for the class or he's too fast for the class, that's when generally you start running into problems. Then you have kids like, see, today they call it ADD. In my days, it was called spilkis. Spilkis in the pants. That's what it was called. When I went to school, everybody had in their class guys who sat like this, right? And they couldn't sit in their seat. They couldn't sit. What spilkes are needles. They had needles in their pants. Today you give them Ritalin and other drugs. In the olden days, we used to give them what the teachers had, a stick. And used to whack them on the stick, and they would sit down, and then they would pop up. It was like that thing in the carnival. They would keep going up and up and down. That's the way they in those days. Now those children, back in my days, the guys who really, today they would definitely be. What do you call that? A doctor, ADHD. They would certainly be qualified as being hyperactive. There was no such thing as hyperactivity in those days. It was just a kid that didn't have any what we called Sitzfleisch. He had no ability to sit. So the teachers would deal differently with these guys. Give them longer recesses, shorter classes. Don't expect them to do this. Because, I'll tell you honestly, when it came to studying in yeshiva, what was the greatest advantage that someone could have? It was not a good head. Now, a good head is always number one. That's if you're born and you're bright naturally, you're already starting ahead of the game. But more important than that is having a good tuchus. That's more important than everything. Why? Because sitting and studying is better than a guy that has a quick head. And we've seen over the years great rabbis who didn't start off fast. They weren't the sharpest guys in the class. But what they had is, they had the ability to sit and really study 6, 7, 8, 9 hours at a time. Now if you have that ability, and you have a sharp head, then you get a Rabbi Soloveitchik. Then you get someone like Lubavitch or Rabbi Soloveitchik who are able to focus all of their natural talents and then sit also, and you'll have that. But if you don't have that, the best that we can do as parents is nurture each kid. Not to force them, but to nurture them with love and kindness. Some you have to push. Some are just going to be simply lazy. Because you have guys, I know many people, and I'm sure we all know, many people that are smart but lazy. Lazy. They grasp the material. Like I told you, one of my sons, whatever I used to say to him, his expression was, and I hated this expression, whatever. Oh, that word was to me like Pavlov's dog. You would say Pavlov's dog, whenever he would say, whatever, it would be like a knife in my heart. Literally, you might as well stab me with a knife. Why? Because you know what whatever means? He's taking absolutely no responsibility. It means I shrug off everything you say. I could care less. I'm foaming from the mouth, trying to get across a message to him. So you hope that your passionate plea is going to find some attentive ears. Right? So at least say, okay, something. No, whatever. Oh, that whatever. Okay? So you have to be able to overcome that. Now, there's ways to overcome it. You could wrestle him to the floor, and we have a wrestling match to overcome the whatever, or try to understand where that comes from and deal with that. It's much easier. Believe me, it's much easier when you could do this early on. Unfortunately, as we all know as parents, nobody has yet come out with a manual. Like, hi mom, I'm here and God sent this for you. Page 1, nurture. Okay, at night do not throw the baby on the floor when baby is crying more than 20 minutes. And because believe me, I felt like doing it. Especially with my first daughter. Okay, she's not here, Chailea, so I can tell a few secrets right now. Especially with the first one, you're not ready. And she had colic. Have you ever had a colicky baby? Okay, bringing it up, and I'm thinking to myself, why? This is what it's all about. This is what it is. This is what it is. Okay, so she should have come with a manual to tell you, no, this is the way it is. Now. This is hard. This is very difficult, parenting. But the more we put into it, and the more that we can, and then it doesn't only go for parenting, but this is true even for ourselves, to tell ourselves how we live our lives. And the more that we put into it, and the more discipline we have with ourselves, and the more discipline, but when I say discipline, I don't mean disciplining the child, but the more discipline that we exert on ourselves, that is going to be a reflection of how the child is going to view us. Because a lot of times what happens is, and this is true also, not only for children, but any time you're trying to be in a position of influence, right? A position of influence, the number one biggest thing that people are going to judge you at is how you act. Because you know why? Talk is cheap. Any guy can get up here. Anybody can get up here and give a sermon. Believe me. And anybody can get up here and make demands of the congregation. And anybody can come up here and exhort everybody. Okay? The key is going to be how you're going to influence people is they're going to judge you how you yourself act. And parents, this is the number one thing that I think where we kind of, because kids do what they see, not what they're told. Right? Am I right? Kids do what they see, not what they're told. You could tell them, do your homework, sit down and read a book. Okay, so let's just take that one for example. Okay, let's just take that example. What do you want your kids to do? Everybody wants their kids to read, right? I mean, reading is important. We've all heard this from early on that reading is important. Now think about this. When is the last time they ever saw you read anything? Besides the paper in the morning. I'm not talking about the newspaper or People's Magazine or Sports Illustrated, whatever magazine you get. Okay? I'm talking about actually reading something of value. Not Harlequin romances, not one of these 50-cent novels. No, never, right? Never. You don't read. So if you don't read, then how do you expect when you tell your child, "I want you to read"? What message is that saying to them? What is it giving it to them? It means nothing to them because you keep exhorting them on something that they never see you doing. They never see you doing. So if you demand your children to eat vegetables and to eat healthy, and you yourself are gumpling down a double burger, then what good is that? What good is that? You're talking to the wall. You're talking to the wall. And the same thing, this is when we talk about general parenting, when we come to the Yiddishkeit kind of parenting, when we say to them, hey, the first thing the Torah tells us to teach the children is even while they're in the crib, before they can talk, you're supposed to say verses of the Torah with them. Shema. You know, the Rebbe's mother writes that from the day that he was born, from day one, she always made sure that he wore a yarmulke. Even when he was 1 day old, she knitted him a little yarmulke and she put it on his head. And she always made sure that he had a yarmulke, even when he was a little baby. So people asked her, what for? When the Rebbe is 1 day old, 2 days old, who needs a yarmulke? But she says, you know what? What does a yarmulke represent? Fear of Hashem. She wanted him, even as a day old, a week old, he should already begin to get that feeling of wearing a yarmulke and having something covering his head. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that to our children. But certainly when our children are laying in bed, we say the Shema with them. We say Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, the whole works. The next verse is even more interesting. Everybody knows if they went to Hebrew school, they know Torah, 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 Torah. That's a verse that everybody learns how to sing in Hebrew school, right? Kindergarten, preschool. What does it say? Torah tziva lanu Moshe, the Torah that Moses commanded to us, Ma'irasha Kehilas Yaakov, is an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob. Which means that this verse tells every single Jew around the world that they have an equal part in the Torah. It doesn't matter if you happen to be a great scholar. It doesn't matter if you live in Ogden, Utah. It doesn't even matter if you don't even know that you're Jewish. You just happen to be, by sheer luck. Okay, we know it's not luck, but it's chosen, but you were born of a Jewish mother, and you're far removed from Yiddishkeit. Far removed. Even this guy, as hard as it is for me to say this, because there's some Jews which, I don't want to mention anybody's name because the tape is on, but let's just say that we know who we're talking about. Some Jews that visit Iran, for example, or whatever. I'm not throwing stones at anybody, but, both from the extreme right, extreme. Okay. Even these guys, I have to swallow hard. Why am I saying this? Because I saw yesterday a tape of a guy giving a speech. For an hour, I was beside myself. Bob knows his middle initial is G. You know who I'm talking about. Norman G. He's a professor at DePaul University. And I think to myself, this is just parenthetically off the subject. I just want to off the subject for a second. I want to do politics for a second. He was invited to give a speech in Vancouver, Canada. And somehow I was doing a research on something. I don't know, I was looking up something. His name popped up. So I clicked it by mistake. Came to his website, so I'm going to scroll down. I see video of speech. I click it on, so I start to watch it. Okay, the subject is criticism of Israel, anti-Semitism. So I knew already that my stomach, I'm going to feel sick. But like a train wreck, I couldn't not watch it. The anti-Semitism there. And he's a Holocaust survivor's kid. And he's proud of it. His parents were survived from the Holocaust. Such anti-Israel diatribe. Now, he's already an extreme left. I mean, he is already off the wall completely. And I'm thinking, I'm telling you, I was so disturbed with what I was hearing, that I couldn't, for an hour I was beside myself. And even this guy, I thought to myself, this guy, I have to include him into a minyan. If this guy would come in here, we'd have 9 guys. This guy would walk through the door. I would have a very tough time including him to a minyan. But he has a soul, like every other Jew, but he's lost. So this verse tells us, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, the Torah that God gave to us, my Rosh Kehilas Yaakov, is an inheritance to the congregation of Israel, which we all believe that every single soul was there standing at Mount Sinai, including this Paskunyak, including this bum was standing there as well. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, I would go self-sacrifice for this guy. I would go martyrdom to save this guy, because this is what I pledge, right? I pledge I'll do anything for any Jew, even if I had to jump in front of a bullet to save another Jew. We want to do it. And I'm thinking, to this guy, okay, anyways, that's the end of the political statement. And let's go back to the regular programming, just to let you know that even this guy, for some odd reason, this is a test to us. This guy's a test to us, how we treat this chazer. And he's a chazer, I'm telling you, nothing less than a chazer. To this guy, because there's no other words to describe this guy. Anybody that cohorts and calls literally calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and supports Hezbollah, which are open terrorists, then we'll cross the line completely. Anyways, let's get back to the things at hand. So why do I mention this? Because Torah tziva lanu, we tell our children that the Torah that Hashem gave to us is an inheritance. Now, it's very interesting why we use the word inheritance. Why of everything else, we could have talked about a gift, we could have talked about an acquisition. There's many different ways we acquire something. Why is it important to say Marasha Kehilas Yaakov? Why is the word inheritance important? Because you know what there's one thing about inheritance that's unique. It keeps going, and you know what else? You do nothing for it. Absolutely nothing you do for it. Right? Acquisition, you have to work, get the money. You want to buy a car, you have to gather the money, go buy the car. You want some other ways of getting something. It takes work, effort. The one thing that takes no work and no effort is an inheritance. The mere fact that you're born of this family automatically sets you up that you inherit the Torah. And the message is to the child inside the little crib that you should know that you are this inheritor. Nobody else except you will take your part of the Torah. Now that is part of trying to influence in the child this idea of specialness, this idea of being unique in the world. Because again, over and over again, we're going to see that the children that have this positive influence upon them, the children that are hearing praises, they will be able to take, because every parent is over a period of time is going to lash into them with a lot of negativism and a lot of diatribe, and it'll be a lot easier for them to take it if and when they know that you have heaped praise upon them, that you have praised them, and at the same time your criticism of them is real. But if the only time you say to them is no, every time they want to do something it's no, what do you think that child's how they grow up, their self-image? You think that child is going to be spontaneous? You think that child is going to be experimental? If every time your child tries to do something, the answer to them is what? No. What do you think is going to happen? Well, what do you think is going to happen to that child? Stunted. That child will never try to experiment. Why? Because he knows that every time he tries to do something, they try to do something, what kind of a reaction do they get? Negative, right? And that's why children need to hear early on Torah tziva lanu Moshe, that the Torah Hashem gave to us is yours. It's a precious inheritance. It's a gift. Hold it high. Be proud with it. We're going to make mistakes. Sure, we make mistakes. We make mistakes as human beings. We make huge mistakes as human beings. We do things that later on we're caught. We say, oy vey, why did I do it? Because, you know why you did it? Because you're a human being. You know what? You were there. The bank vault was open. You couldn't pay the mortgage that month. No one was looking. You sauntered into the bank vault. You're left with a little extra cash that you know. Now you're caught. Okay, everybody in prison. Everybody's innocent. I didn't do it. They set me up. It was the Nazi party. I mean, it's everybody's like that. Everybody's the same way. Going back to the child, praise, yamin mikareves. The right hand is always embracing, and the left hand is kind of being the stern one. The left hand is the one that's saying no, no, no. But the no, no, no will be a lot sweeter if there's more of yes, yes, yes. What's wrong with experimentation? What's wrong with trying something? What's wrong with, you know what? You know, within reason and within boundaries, let the child grow, let the child live. And when I say the word child, I'm not only talking about in a chronological age, but the same thing is true for us. You have people in a congregation that have hit the wall. They've hit the wall. Basically, you see them, they're already living their lives at 40, at 30, at 45. It's over. They've hit the wall. They're not interested in growing. They're very happy in this little comfort zone that they built. They're not willing to experiment anymore. And religion is all about experimentation. Religion is always trying something new. If I say to you, come on, I want you to come to a Shabbos night, a Friday night dinner, and you've never experienced that, you think to yourself, oh my God, it's got to be the most boring thing. What could we possibly do at a Friday night dinner with the rabbi? Like, you're going to sit there, the guy's going to say kiddush, and then they challah with gefilte fish. Let's be honest. I mean, this is not the number one attraction of Judaism. Okay? I once went to Vaughn's and bought a jar of gefilte fish. The guy asked me at the counter, do people really eat this? I know we sell it, but I never thought anybody actually eats that stuff in that jar. I said, no, I'm buying it as an ornament. I got to put my flowers in there. Okay, so the guy thinks to himself, what is he going to do at the rabbi's house for 2 hours? He's going to start talking about Maimonides and free choice and free will and Torah. You have to be able to open up your eyes and to experiment. And then when you go to a Friday night meal, not at the rabbi's house, but anybody's house, you see the unbelievable beauty. Now, people who've experienced it, so imagine, there are people in this room that have grown up with Friday night meals. To me, this is one of the most important things that there is in a person's week. Unfortunately, for the past several years, I've not had a normal Friday night meal. Because I live here I live like a homeless person in this hotel. Me and the 27 other homeless people that are here. So after services, we all gather together, we sit around in a thing, and we tell stories, and then we crawl into our cardboard boxes, and we go to sleep for the evening, somewhere over there. I haven't had a normal Friday night meal, but when I did used to have a Friday night meal, when I lived a normal life before getting involved in this show, so what happened was, it was the greatest time, it was the greatest thing. People would be able to come over, we had time to talk, we had time to schmooze, no one is rushing, it's Friday night, we're all relaxed and all of it's that. I'm telling you, this Friday night meal brought more people back to Yiddishkeit than anything else. You know why? Because people were jealous. People were jealous. They saw something in there, not because great. No, but they saw a family around the table, how we all sat there. There was something about it that was really special. Because where everybody is Friday night. Mr. Newman, Rabbi Newman's father, who was an Omer for a while. Those who know Rabbi Newman, the dean of the Hebrew Academy, and they knew his father, Phil. He passed away about 5 years ago. Actually, 5 years ago. Yesterday was his yard site. He had 49 grandchildren. Okay, 49 grandchildren. One man, 49 grandchildren, okay? That's a heck of a lot. That's about 9 families. He had like around 9 families worth of grandchildren. 10 families, okay? And he would always say, he died when he was about 93, and he would always say, you know what? My greatest accomplishment in life was that I know where every one of those grandchildren are on Friday night. I know that they're in shul, then they go home to eat Shabbos meal. That was his greatest accomplishment that he did. And I tell you that only happens if you're willing to open up and experiment. But most people here in America, Friday night is either Dallas, we want a TV, or something else, and they don't want to, God forbid, give it away. And I'm dating myself, Dallas, Schmalice. That's like years ago, not today. I don't know what's... No. what's going on Friday night. So here, people are afraid to. God forbid. You know what's going to happen? Then we'll like it. Oh, and if we like it, we're going to do it another week, and then another week, and then another week, and before you know it, then the husband has to make kiddush, and the mother has to light candles, and there's going to be this, there's going to be a filter fish, and chicken soup, and chicken, all of that stuff. But it all starts, I'm telling you, with experimentation, with all willing to open up our eyes and open up our vistas. Because why is it the problem? Because when we were born, and as little children, our parents, it didn't mean much to them. And if it didn't mean much to them, they didn't imbue the beauty of Yiddishkeit. And I blame the rabbis as well, and the Jewish organizations that were at the turn of the century, because they sold Yiddishkeit in such a morose, way, because they made it tough, and they all this seriousness of it, that a lot of people felt it's totally irrelevant. Who needs it? You can get along very well without it. But you can't get along well without it. You cannot get along well without it. And it starts when? Not when you're 21, not when you're 27, but when you're 1 year old, 2 years old, 5 years old, 8 years old. Now, so what does it have to do with us? We're not 17, 27. We maybe even be more than 37, maybe even more than 39 years old. Lo yaleinu, God forbid. All right? What does it have to do with us? Because every single one of us has to realize the same message that we give to the children, we need to believe in ourselves. We need to believe that there's only one of me. There is only one of me. And only I, me, and no one else can fulfill my mission here on earth. And even though my soul came down very reluctantly, and it came down and was fighting, I have it within myself the capacity to do what's right. I have within myself the capacity. Now, whether my parents did a great job, or a mediocre job, or a poor job, will help me. Sure, if my parents were good and they gave me a good self-image and I know how to make good decisions, it's going to help me. If my parents didn't do that, it's much harder. But still, no excuse. Why? Because the faculties that we have within ourselves, which I will go into in a moment, the faculties that we have, that we are born with, we're in complete control. And what are those faculties? They're spelled in an acronym called Chabad. Now, what is Chabad? You've heard of the name of the organization. Everybody knows Chabad House. Everybody knows the word Chabad. But what really is Chabad? Chabad is an acronym of 3 words: Chachma, Bina, and Das. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Now, why would some organization pick that? That seems like the most boring thing to call yourself. I could usually call yourself Bruins, call yourself the Avengers, call yourself, some name. But Chabad, hey, what's the name of your football team? The Intellectuals. No chance. No chance of winning any bowl games in football. 0.0. The Caltech basketball team has lost, I think, 112 straight basketball games. I don't think they've won since the 60s. I don't think they've won a game because they call themselves, you ever see the Caltech basketball team? It's a bunch of Dudley, do-rights, with their glasses. They can't shoot a ball, but they can figure out good things. Why do we call ourselves Chabad? Why? Because those are the faculties that control us. They control who I am. Why is that? Because as we grow up and as we begin to mature, and we go from adolescence into young adulthood, and from young adulthood into adulthood, what happens is we now have to stop living by emotions and begin living by reason and intellect and logic. When you're a kid, what does it for you? When you're 7, 8, 9, your emotions. You give a child a candy, oh, it's so happy. After a candy, you give it a bicycle, oh, it's so happy. The child is going to relate much more on the emotional part of their well-being. Angry. We get upset at a 2-year-old for throwing a tantrum. But what do you want a 2-year-old to sit down and discuss Aristotle with you? And then started Aristotle. Okay, what exactly is the Platonic, resolution to this problem? I mean, what do you want to discuss Spinoza with you? A 2-year-old? A 2-year-old is basically an emotional, maladjusted individual. That's what they are. That's what it is. And you hope that you pray that they get over it quickly and they get into become a 3-year-old so that they'll get a better adjusted. Okay. But that's why, because children are emotional beings. They deal with anger, happiness, other feelings of rage or whatever it goes through them. But logic is not yet developed. as we grow older and we begin to understand, or some of us never grow older and never begin, but most of us, hopefully grow older and mature. Now the world of Chabad is supposed to overtake the world of Chagas. Chagas is the emotional part of who we are. The kindness, the severity, the judgment, all that anger and everything like that. When you hit a certain age, now, as strange as it might sound, this is supposed to happen. Okay, this is supposed to happen when we hit Bar Bat Mitzvah. Boy, did they blow it on that one. I know the Rabbi, did they make a mistake on the Bar Bat Mitzvah part of it? Then at least 10 years too early. At least 10 years. But that's when it's supposed to happen. Now, a 13-year-old boy is supposed to be a member of the congregation. He has all of their obligations. He's supposed to now be a man. Do you see the guys that are being bar mitzvah? Do you see the crop that's being bar mitzvah? I mean across the board. I don't mean anybody special. These are men. Oy vey's mir. Forget about it. They're good children. They're wonderful children. And they've worked a hard year, believe me. When they read the Torah, they read well. But these are not men. Men are men, and bar mitzvah boys are still trying to figure out what's happening in the world. What's happening to me in the world. That's what's going on. But as they grow up, they're supposed to they're supposed to be changing. And they're supposed to be digging into more of their faculties of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Now, what is the difference between the three? Let's talk about that just for a moment. Wisdom is an intuitive flash. What it is this, you ever have an idea? Anybody here ever have an idea? Sure, everybody has plenty of ideas, right? That idea comes in a flash. You think about it, you don't know, you're driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden it hits you like a bolt of lightning. I have to do this. I gotta do this program. Okay? Now, it comes and goes very quickly. Okay? That's what Chachma is about. That's what wisdom is all about. An intuitive ray, a flash, quick in and quick out. An idea man. And a lot of people are like that. A lot of people are great idea people. You know what they lack? They lack the next two steps. Like there are people who are creative. A mile a minute. They come up with a billion different ideas. We should do this, we could do that, I can do this, I can do that, like this. What they're missing is the next step, which is called Bina. Bina is understanding. What is Bina? Bina is the ability to take that idea and to give it some meat. Meaning, I had an idea. I want to create a band here for this show. Okay, I want to create a band for the show. What's a great idea? It's a wonderful idea, Abba. Boy, I'm so brilliant. I'm so... No wonder they pay me the big bucks around here. It's just tremendous. I can't believe it. I've come up with this idea. That's Chachma. And most of the ideas stay in that world. Because by the time you turn off the freeway, you already forgot. What was I thinking about? I had a brilliant idea this morning, but I just forgot. Okay, forget about it. Another idea will come to my head. Okay? The next step is more important than the first step. The Bina, the understanding, the giving the meat, the development of the idea now. That part is important because now you have to start putting it to paper. I want to create a band for the show. I want the young people to be involved in something special. Okay, so band. I write the word band down. What do we need for the band? Who do I contact for the band? Where are we going to do the band? Who's it going to be for? Teenagers? Adults? Are we going to be singing? Are we going to play music? Where are we going to get to? Where are we going to practice? How are we going to do it? Who's going to lead it? All of that stuff starts to become the development of the idea. That's what's called understanding. Bina is now I'm developing the project. I'm putting meat to it. It's starting to take some what we call form. Before it was lifeless. It had nothing. It was just a spark. Right? Now it's taking some form. And when it takes form, that's what's called Bina. Parenthetically, in Kabbalah it explains that Chachma, the wisdom, is usually dedicated to the man, while the Bina is dedicated to the mother. Father and mother. The father is the intuitive, the hunter. Right? The guy that has as much patience as a fly on acid. Like, most men. They're hunters. Today they're going to kill the big boar. Right? They shoot the boar. We got the boar. Okay, what are we going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to conquer something else. And tomorrow we're going to conquer something else. No patience. The mother is the Bina. The mother, I'm not saying everybody falls into this category. There's some men who make better mothers than mothers. And there's some mothers who make better fathers than fathers. But generally Kabbalah says that the mother is the more nurturer. The mother is the one that has the patience, takes the child, nurtures the child. The bina, Eim habanim smecha. Eim habanim, the mother of the children, comes from the word bina. She's the one that can put the structure, that keres habayis. She is the cornerstone, the foundation of the whole home. Of the home, this is the mother. So we have chachma, the intuitive flash. We have the bina, now the understanding and the development of the idea. And the last part is the das, is the knowledge. And what is the knowledge? The knowledge is the connection between the intellectual world and the practical world. So when I pick up the phone and I call up the first person, Paula, and I say, Paula, we have a tremendous idea, can we start implementing it? Once that starts to flow already in the practical world, what I've done is I've connected the chachma, the bina, and the das. I've connected the wisdom, the idea that came in, the bina, the kind of the development of the idea, but not all of the particulars, because that's still going to be left up to the end product, but at least I have some kind of form that this idea can take, and then the connection to the practical. Practical could be going to the bank for a loan to start the business, it could be renting a warehouse, it could be implementing that idea into practicality. Now, not everything is going to be success. This has nothing to do with success. Chabad has nothing to do with success. Success is a bracha melmaila. Success is a blessing that comes from heaven. You could do all of your due diligence. You could say, this is the greatest business. This is the best business in the entire world. No one has come up with this idea. And the next thing you know, Bill Gates comes and railroads you over and flattens you like the white stripe that is on the freeway. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, do I have a headache? And because that's Bill's tractor just rolled you over. Okay, so no one guarantees you success. But what you've been able to accomplish is the Chabad part of it. Now that is not only in business, that has a tremendous influence on every single thing that we do in our lives. Every decision that we make, every step that we take, everything that we do is supposed to. It doesn't, and I'll explain to you why in a second, is supposed to be governed by Chabad. It's supposed to be governed by the intellectual, logical, rational side of you. So you make a decision, what should I eat? Chabad will tell you what should you eat. Of course what you should eat. You should eat what's healthy for you, because health will get you to strengthen your study of Torah. The study of Torah will get you easier, to do this. This is what Chabad is going to do. Chabad is supposed to guide you and help you make the right decisions, the right logical, rational decisions. But since we're kids, since we're children, what we've done is we've always allowed the chagas, we've always allowed the emotional part to take us, and that's why when we're emotional and we're excited and we do things, that's why the intellectual gets pushed aside. It gets pushed away. We don't think about the rational and the logical, what's the outcome of it. I'm excited now. I need it right now. And aren't we like that? Aren't we impetuous right away? We want instant gratification. If I tell you, you know what, it takes a long time to make a salad, but it only takes a second to go into your freezer to eat something fatty. What are we going to go for? What's quick? Instant gratification. Especially here in this country, everything is instant. Instant coffee, instant this, instant that. They have instant salvation. Our neighbors to the south and to the north, they talk about instant salvation. 1, 2, 3, you're saved. Jews say, no, it takes years and months and this, plow it through, you have to go this, a circumcision, this. That's why there's 15 million Jews and 4 billion Christians. And let's be honest, because we've come up with the most complicated program in the entire world to convert people. If the first thing turns you off, you have to circumcise yourself. You think if that was such a brilliant idea, why don't we have billboards? Huh? Show up shul by the shore, Sunday morning circumcisions, available 9:30, 10%. I'm going to forget about it, okay? You know what? That's it, no one's going to go for it. Right away, we knocked out 3/4 of our, of our clientele, of our clientele. Okay, but that's a different story for another day. We're not going to go into how to market Judaism. But as adults, what we still do is we still look for the easy way. We don't look for the long, rational, proper way how to do it. Now, I'm not equating rationality with right. Don't get me wrong. But what it's supposed to do is Chabad is supposed to allow you to sit down and make a decision from a detached source, from a detachment. You see, intellectuals are generally cold people. Think about it. Think about intellectuals. They sit, they're cold, they're rational, they're not passionate people, they go by the book, they love the book. Everything is detached. Everything is detached from them. More people, business people sometimes are hot. Hot people, they make quick decisions, back and forth. They're excited, they're passionate, know about it. Okay, intellect is cold, calculated, don't get nervous. You have to look at it at an objective way. Who's objective? We're not objective, we're people of the heart. We need 1, 2, 3, I need an answer right now. Quick. That leads us to make befuddled decisions. And why this happens is because early on in our development, over time, we've been taught over and over again this idea of instant gratification, not instant gratification, but instant, quick, do things quickly, get it done quickly. You have homework to do. What are you going to do your homework? It take an hour to do your homework or 5 minutes to do your homework? Come on, 5 minutes, right? You get it over with as soon as you possibly can, because we've got to go to those video games, whatever we're doing at that time. The video games, this game, that game, that game. And that's where this whole idea of parenting and instilling in our children, and also in our own lives, don't get me wrong. Again, I'm using children as a metaphor for our own lives, is to instill in them good traits early on, and the good traits will allow them to make good decisions. Because I can tell you, I don't care how old your children are now, some of us have children who are on their own for a number of years, eventually you're going to let them go. So as much as we're able to protect them, and as much as we look at them when they're 2 years old, 3, 5, 8, one day they're going to walk out of the door and they're going to have the keys of your car in their hands, okay? And they're going to start that motor, and they're going to drive off, okay? And if you think for a moment, think about this for a second. Think about this for a second. I want to make sure I word this correctly, because it's such a great statement that I read. Is for all the sleepless nights that you have when the baby's crying in the bed, is nothing compared to the sleepless nights you're going to have when that bed is empty. If you think about that for a second. When they're out there at 2 in the morning and they're not home and you're like this. So it's one thing when your baby's sleeping in bed and it's crying and you're like frustrated and please go to sleep, it's 2 in the morning. Okay, that's one kind of a frustration, but you have the baby in your arms. When your son is 19 years old and it's New Year's Eve and he's out 20, 21, 22, let's say not 19, 21, and they're out there and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and they haven't called and they don't know where they are, and you call them on the cell phone that you're paying for. Not that I'm getting frustrated here, but I'm just letting it out because it's much easier. This is free. I guess I'd have to go to my therapist. Costs money, and they don't answer the cell phone, and you're paying for the cell phone, and it works for every friend except for dad. Every guy, because I get the bills at home, right? And I see 15,000 minutes used this month. I see to every continent, to every country, 191 countries, United Nations. My sons call all over the world. But when I call them, you have reached Perelmuter. Please leave your name and message. Okay? Thank you. So 2 in the morning, you're pacing back and forth because. So what's worse? The sleepless nights you have when the little one is crying, or the sleepless nights you think that who knows where they are. God have mercy. God have mercy on them. So when is it time to worry about them? Not when they're 21 years old. Because at 21 you hope and you pray that you've done enough early on in their lives to allow them to make good decisions. And every one of our children is going to be challenged, just like we're challenged. Every one of them is going to be challenged with things that who knows what's going to be in 10 years from now. I know my children, they're out there, whatever's going on, college, their friends, all of these things. And it doesn't make a difference if we're in a religious community, because today everything is open and everything is known. And you hope and pray that your children make the right decision. And the only way to, not guarantee it, but to have the odds on your side, 3-to-1 odds, 4-to-1 odds, 5-to-1 odds, that they will make the good decision, is if you track them when they're 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old, and teach them then how to make a good decision. That not always reaching for the candy bowl is a good thing, right? It's much easier shutting them up. I want a candy, I want a candy, I want a candy. And they're experts at this, right? They'll wear you down and wear you down and wear you down, and they'll know, oh, as soon as you come home and you're tired and then they'll work you, right? Because there's two parents. And not both parents are not the same. I'm a sucker. Do I want to see a kid crying? Or do I want to see my grandson crying? They know I'm a softie. Chani's a little tougher. So they'll work us. Mommy said, I can't have it. If you let, Mama, does that happen? If you let, go have the candy. Okay, so just now transport that candy to something else. And all they remember is have that candy. So it's okay to do it, right? It's okay to do, even if it's wrong to have the candy before dinner. Daddy said it's not so bad to have the candy before dinner. So now candy becomes something else and something else and something else. And now what you've done is you've trained them to do what they like. Not what's right, but what they like. And then so you expect, so when they're sitting in the bar and having the 4th, 5th, 6th beer in the bar, what are they thinking about? What did daddy, all those things come back to play a role in their psyche and in their decision making. That daddy let us have that candy, so that means that it's okay, so a 4th beer, and they know shouldn't have a 5th beer. And then the worst thing is when you have the keys in the hand of the car, and then there's that, and then you just want to make sure. But that's what this is all about, really. Is starting early on when we talk about making decisions and good decisions as early on. And the same thing is true with us. I don't care if you're 51 years old or 61 or 41 or 31. We have to do the same thing. I've often said before, and I've told this story a number of times, the number one sin is idolatry. Idolatry, that's the number one worst sin in Judaism. There's nothing worse than worshiping an idol. Okay? Anybody here ever want to worship an idol? Anybody here ever have any desire to worship an idol? No one, right? No one has anymore this idea of taking a rock, putting it on your table and bowing down to it and saying, no, what we do is, anybody here have a desire to bring a sacrifice to an idol? You want to bring a bull into your house, slaughter it, and serve it up as a... This happened in the olden times, it has absolutely no relation to us. But what does it say here? It says in verse 21 of chapter 18 in Leviticus, verse number 21, you shall not present any of your children to pass through for Molech. Now Molech was this old deity, old idol worship system. And do not profane the name of your God, I am Hashem. Let's read that again. You shall not present any of your children to pass through for Molech. Now what was the service for Molech? They would have big lanterns of fire burning on both sides. These huge fires. And the priests would take the children and they would walk them through the fires. They wouldn't sacrifice them, but they would walk them through these 2 pillars of fires and say, there's Molech, there is the deity, we have to worship, that's the deity. So God says, this is forbidden. This is forbidden. Okay, so how does it relate to us here in America today? There's no Molech, there's no fire, we're not taking our children through fire. But you know what we are doing? We are bringing, every one of us brings human sacrifices. What do I mean by bringing human sacrifices? And I'll illustrate it by a story that I myself did. And I've told the story a number of times. I'm sorry if you've heard the story before, but I think it illustrates a very important point, what I mean by parenting. Years ago, before we started the shul full time, we had services Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, and then we used to do programs here, like a Friday night dinner, and Paula remembers all these things that we used to do periodically. And one of the things we did was, we lived on Amelia, where we live now, we had Pesach Seders, community Pesach Seders. We would send it up. We had already a little bit of a mailing list. We passed it out in papers and all this. And people would come, we had 30, 40, whatever the numbers was, they used to come to our Seder. Okay. One particular year, this must have been label is now 16, maybe this was 10 years ago, 9 years ago, some of the 9 or 10 years ago. And he goes to the Hebrew Academy, and that year, he was, like Marley did this year, Marley Simberg told me she did it this year, she learned the 4 questions in Yiddish. The 4 questions of the Haggadah in Yiddish. She was so proud, especially since David's mother is a Holocaust survivor, and they went down to San Diego and she said it. It was a whole to-do. I think it's beautiful. It brings up so many memories for her grandmother and everything like that. So my son, who doesn't speak Yiddish at home, We know lazy, because lazy guy like me didn't speak Yiddish to his children. He's proud, so proud to say the 4 questions in Yiddish. Okay? He takes his, in Hebrew Academy, everybody comes home with a Haggadah, that they self-made Haggadah. He takes it, and I'm sitting in this chair. He puts it down in this chair like this. And he says, this is my chair. This is where I'm going to sit. That's it. Tonight's the night. Okay? So I was sitting there getting ready for Pesach. We're putting out the matzah, we're putting out the mortar, and we're setting it, and people are starting to come, Now inevitably, in every shul function, what's going to happen is people are going to come without making reservations. That's par for the course in a business like this. Comes in somebody, a new guy, a new face. So what happened? So I did not allow my Chabad to take over. What I did was, I let my Chagas, my emotions, take over. A new fellow, a new member, hoo-ha, hee-hee. So I came in, I grabbed the guy, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, what's your name? Shmerel Ben Beryl. Now, oh, wonderful, Shmerel Beryl, Katzel Nellenboig, whatever the guy's name was. Great. I tell Label, come here. Take your Haggadah and go sit down over there in the seat in the back. Okay? You know what he did? He took the Haggadah, he left the room completely. He ran into his room, slammed the door, didn't come out for the rest of the Seder. This is the way he was. He says he disagrees with me on the story. I keep telling the story in front of him. He says not true. He was never that angry. Okay, fine. I think it was. He's like this. Okay? I felt this big. Now the next day I had an opportunity, because we used to daven on Atlantic Avenue, the show on Atlantic Avenue. The next day was my turn to preach. We had a rotation of preachers. My turn to darshan. So that day I talked about human sacrifices. That last night I committed idolatry. I sacrificed a human being. I sacrificed my very own son, who in the Torah says you shall not present any of your children to pass through to Molech. I did that. I committed this sin. I took my child and I passed him through to Molech, because I sacrificed him for the betterment, which I thought the betterment of the community. It was a wrong decision on my part. That guy should have sat there, because my child is also a human being. My child is also a person, has feelings, has emotions, has needs, has wants, has goals, has dreams, wanted to impress. Why, only I have to impress? What about him having to impress? That night, I learned I was already a grown man. I already had 6 children. I thought I'd never learn a lesson, another lesson in life. That night I learned a lesson about human sacrifice. That even your own family, you also have to be careful of how you're treating them. Because you know why? Because then we tread on, right? We tread on them. Take advantage of Hani. So what? Throw another 20 pieces chicken. So another 20 people show up without making reservations. I said, Hani, what are you getting so nervous about? Of course, I don't have to cook. I'm not the one sweating it Friday night. Are we going to have enough? Are we not going to have enough? Cut it in 8s, cut it in quarters, cut the kugel smaller. I'm the big shot. I could say, hey, everybody who wants to go. Because why? Because I tread on her. I step on her, because I take her for granted, right? What I do is I sacrifice her for the betterment of the community, and that's what's wrong. Because why? What happens is, at that exact moment, I forgot every lesson that I taught to everybody else. I forgot that lesson about how to let Chabad run your life and not Chagas. Because I thought I was doing a good thing. I didn't do it for self-aggrandizement. I thought I'm doing a good thing, having a stranger sitting right next to me. But what I did was, for the sake of the stranger, I killed somebody else. And that, my friends, is human sacrifice. And how many times do we do this? How many times do we sacrifice it, not only for the betterment of the good? How many times do we sacrifice it just for nothing? We just sacrifice them. We do nothing because I want to, they need, I want to watch the ball game. So I watch the ball game. So they need me. Nah, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm off hours. There's the famous story, a kid once calls his father, who was a high-priced lawyer in New York, and on the phone, he gets him on the phone, he says, Dad, how much do you take an hour for people to see you? He says, about $300 an hour. So the kid says, Dad, could you do me a favor? So Dad says, sure, for you, you're my son. Can you lend me $280? So the father says, why do you need $280? He says, because I have 20, I want to buy an hour of your time. Okay? Now that, my friends, is a statement that should stick it into our hearts. Could stick it into our hearts, because it's not only that child, it's all the loved ones we have around us. Everything, the closest ones we have around us are the ones that we're going to step on the hardest on. Why? Because We don't allow the Chabad to sit there and to make a right decision and to do it correctly and to think that you're doing right with all of the ramifications. We want speed, expediency, self gratification, and we end sacrificial. We end with the sacrifices. And it all starts from day one. Like we started this whole lecture off. Today is all about the first baby steps in living a meaningful life, is to tell ourselves, just like if we were parents, to tell our children, but we're the biggest child of all, to tell ourselves that we are special, that we are here for a purpose, that only we can finish this mission, and only God chose us. And Torah Tziva Lanu, that the Torah belongs to us, that we have to be connected to the Torah like there's nothing else in the world, that Torah becomes part and parcel of our identity, that Torah becomes part and parcel of our daily lives and our daily decisions. And education is so important. How to educate your children and how to educate yourself is by acting. You see, to me, that is the biggest divide between Judaism and Christianity. And when Christianity knocked out good deeds, where Judaism continued to press on the good deeds, that not only by faith alone are you going to make it, but you have to actually do good deeds. You got to visit people in the hospital. You have to go, and we talked about a number of different things that we do here in the shul about visiting elderly people and all of that stuff. Those are the things that hammer home into ourselves and into our children the fact that what we have is meaningful lives. That's why people were so careful of the music that children listened to when they were young, of the movies children watched when they were young, of the toys children played. Now, we all know that there's ban against guns. Don't bring boys guns. To me, this is silly, because they're going to make guns themselves. This is a gun. This is a gun. But we don't have to nurture them on that. We don't have to nurture them and what kids have early on, and the way they see well, obviously this is the next and the last thing that we're going to talk about, is the way they see how their parents interact with each other, how people interact and how you interact with your neighbors. If you're a surly guy, and everybody knows that you're a screamer at your neighbors, what kind of a message is this to your children? What is the message to? How do you resolve a problem? Screaming, anger, rash, right? So what kind of children are you going to, what kind of children are you going to raise? Angry, rash, bitter children. It's too late already, yeah? After 9 already? What? Is it after 9 already? What?
It's police.
Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, you know what? And that, my friends, is also part and parcel of everything that we do for our children, is that how we relate to our spouses, and how we talk to them, and how we listen to them, and how we resolve difficult things, because everybody has difficult things. Everybody has issues. You have issues with your parents. Who doesn't have issues with their parents? Anybody doesn't have any issues with their parents. My parents were Holocaust survivors. I think they're related to me. I was a kid growing up in Montreal. My father was raised in Sarna, Poland. No hockey. There was no Sarna Polish team over there. What did he know? That's my whole life was hockey, following hockey, baseball. What did he know? Nothing. He was generation gap. Okay, so who didn't have problems? Everybody had problems. But the way you see your father and mother interact that's the way you see how to solve problems, our problem solving, and how to make decisions. Now sometimes it's hard, because no matter what you come from, because monogamy is not natural. Let's get that off the table right away, because the Torah says that monogamy is not natural. Forget about it, right? How many wives did Abraham have? Our forefather, the great illustrious Abraham, the first Jew, a number of different wives, right? Okay, Yitzchak, forget him. He's the exception to the rule. We'll leave him at a side for a second. Jacob, 4 wives, right? So what does the Torah tell us? That monogamy is not, it's crazy, it's nuts, right? It's crazy. Thank God for Rabbeinu, Rabbeinu Gershon. 1,000 years ago, Rabbeinu Gershon came up, Meir HaGoyla, the light of the exile, and he says, no, Judaism will not be a monogamous, a polygamous, I'm sorry, monogamous. You see where my mind is, okay? You see? Judaism will not be anymore a polygamous religion. It's going to be monogamous. From now on, one husband, one wife, and that's the way it goes. Now, let's analyze that for a second. one wife, and there's a Rabbi Manis Friedman from Minnesota, a great Chabad rabbi who deals with this in great length. You could get his book. Doesn't anybody blush anymore? Or for his people who don't like him, does anybody flush anymore? Okay, anyways, this. So he goes into great detail about this whole idea of relationship of spouses. Because normally it's two different worlds coming together. Even in the best kind of circumstances. Let's say, for example, my marriage. So I already came from an Orthodox family. Chani came from an Orthodox family. I came from a Lubavitch family. She came from a Lubavitcher family. I wanted to go and do the Rebbe's work. She wanted to do the Rebbe's work. Okay? So already the first date, already some commonality. I mean, it wasn't a question of, okay, are we going to eat, how we can have kosher in but eat out? Will we eat out but eat kosher out but not have kosher in the house? I mean, the old rabbi said, someone came to I think it was the old Satmar Rebbe, said, was bragging to me. He says, Rebbe, you should know that I keep kosher at home, but I eat out. So he says, it's good to know that because your dishes will go to heaven. All right? Your dishes will go to heaven. Okay? That's good. It's good to know. So that was not a question. We're eating in, it's eating out. What are we going to do? Friday nights, we're going to go to shul. Saturday, stay home. Was not an issue anymore with us. All those things were taken care of. All of these things already were resolved. We're both willing to go on the Rebbe's shlichus. We're willing to go into the Rebbe's army. Wherever the Rebbe sends us, we're willing to go. That was not a question anymore. Okay? That ended the commonality. That's where all of this thing ended. Why? I'll tell you why. For those that knew my in-laws, Bob was at my in-laws' house several years ago. We spent a day over there. And they came here to visit my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. They had an open house. When I first walked in there, I went, oh my God, this is a zoo. This is not a home. This is a zoo. There was no front door. Friday night, 20, 30 people would be sitting at the table. My mother-in-law would be cooking. My wife would be cooking. My father-in-law was a matchmaker. His phone was ringing off the hook. I came once for supper there. Before I was even engaged, and I was just like standing there observing the scene. I'm saying, what am I getting into here? This is crazy. The phone is, this guy needs a shidduch, and this guy needs money, and this guy's coming into the house, and they're all busy running my house. If the phone rang twice a week, the phone is ringing. We all run over. Who could it be? You know what? Dinner on a Friday night was me, my father, my mother, and my sister. And since my sister's a little older than me, she already went to college. So for many years, it was me, my father, my mother. That was Friday night dinner. We finished in about 10 minutes. We raced over to the couch to see who would get the couch first. And that would be that. That was it. Quiet house. Tame, calm. I enter into the zoo, to come into this place. It's like, how am I going to live like this? How am I going to live like this? So here already you have differences and diversions of way you're going to tackle an issue. Now, I saw in Chani, and hopefully she saw in me also, this thing that we can grow together and love each other and build a family together. But it wasn't easy. When she came to my house and she looked at the way I was brought up, she said, my mother cooked like a half a chicken. They each ate a half a chicken before Shabbos, not for Friday night meal. That was for the snack they would eat. Then it came to eating the food. My mother's an Eastern European. You know how my mother cooked chicken? 4 days. Okay? The meat had to fall off the bone. I could not eat meat if I have to wrestle with it. The stalks, this is my wife's maiden name. You know how they ate chicken? They took the chicken and they showed it to the fire. Here, see the fire? Let's eat. Okay? Raw. Steak in the Perelmuter's house. Monday you put it up, Friday you eat the steak. Dry. Hard. Well done. Stalks, bring the cow in, show him the fire, the barbecue, let's eat. Raw. I'm telling you, this is, so all that stuff, all these things. Now, you may think that these are all superficial things, right? These are very but they're not superficial because they lived a life that they were completely dedicated to other people. Literally completely dedicated to other people. Night was no night, day was no day there. My father-in-law was known in the community as a Isha Chesed, a guy that you could come in day, night, mornings. He would help you, whatever you need. When he was a matchmaker, he once went on a date with the guy. That means he didn't send him on the date. He actually took the guy, put him in his car, drove him to the date because the guy was a little bit, he was a little cracked. So he took him out, sat by the date. I mean, he sat in the living room while these two people were dating for 3 hours. Which other matchmaker would do this? Waited till the date was over, took the guy back in his car and drove home. Okay? That's the kind of a man he was. In my house, shh. Lock the door, it's quiet, still, machnish kein Gereder, don't make any noise, don't make any things, don't make any... When my wife came the first time to sit, and the four of us sat for dinner Friday night, she says, where's everybody else? I said, this is it! This is it, this is it, and shh, don't scream, don't talk loud, don't do anything, don't do other things. So all of these things you're going to get used to, and what's going on with you? You see, I'm not like that the professor that's going to block the door. Don't rely on me. Don't rely on me. The shooting starts, I'm at that door, you're all for yourselves. You think I'm going to be like, I don't need no Chabad house named after me. They're naming out a Chabad house in Virginia Tech after him. They have great memorials after him. He was a wonderful guy. Don't expect me to do that. I want to be known as Perelmuter the chicken. Okay? I want to be the 142nd fastest gun in the West. I'm not looking to draw against Jesse James and his brother. Thank you very much. No hero in me. So I don't give you any illusions that I'm going to save you. Everybody here is on their own, baby. May the quickest win. All right? I'm gone. Okay? Okay. So going back. So what's the point I'm saying? So everybody, no matter what, no matter how you're going to no matter what kind of a commonality, there's always going to be differences. Now, if you extrapolate that into differences of when people are not, one is a higher level religion, one is less, one wants this, one wants that, one wants this. We know there's all differences of opinion, and it's almost impossible. Literally, as Manis Friedman says, marriage is a miracle. It really is a miracle. It's the miracle of communication, it's the miracle of sacrifice, it's the miracle of allowing two separate individuals to come together and to be as one. Because I know for myself, growing up where we never dated, we were yeshiva guys, we never went out with her. Hani was the first girl I ever dated in my whole life. First girl, she swept me off the number. And that was it. And it was finished. Now you expect a guy that never went out on a date. One night, boom, now I have a wife. I can't tell you all the stories because, it'll take too long. But when you're a single guy, and as a yeshiva bacher, there's no day, there's no night, there's no responsibility, there's no accountability, there's no one you have to answer to. We used to stay up till 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, we'll do whatever we like to. All of a sudden, now you're accountable to somebody. You have to get up in the morning, you got to go to work, you have to come home, you have to compliment her on the food. Well, but we ate in the dormitory, slop, eating over there. And who had to compliment the chef, this big fat guy, who did this? It's a whole different world, and they have to adapt. So the way we adapt and the way we deal with each other, those are exactly the kind of ways your children are going to learn to adapt and to relate to others. That's just the way it's going to work. And if it's screaming and shouting at the top of the lungs, then what happens? What do the children learn? How to resolve issues by shouting and battering and God forbid abuse. And I don't mean abuse, physical abuse, but even mental abuse. Even mental abuse, that's what the children learn. So, my dear friends, from today's lecture, we start to begin to have an understanding of what it means to have the tools to live a meaningful life. Because it's not easy. It's not falling down from heaven and one day we wake up and we say, you know what, I want to live a meaningful life, I'm going to do it. Sure, one can. There are people that are able to turn their life around and start, but believe me, if we would be able to grow up with the necessary tools, if we had within ourselves that disposition, and not only the disposition, but we had already the training over and over. What is success? Is success doing 1,000 things well? No, it's doing one thing 1,000 times well, right? Think of every great guy. Whatever they did, it's doing one thing over and over. Einstein didn't think of the theory of relativity, scored a winning basketball game, and then go invent the Tupperware, and then learn how to write a concerto. You didn't know. Most people who are successful do one thing over and over and over and over and over well. And that's what we need to do. We need to look into ourselves and first of all take a cheshbon nefesh, take a real accounting of who we are, what we are, how we make those decisions, what is our relationship to those people around us, what is our relationship and what kind of an aura do we give off, what kind of a smell do we give off. Yadam eitz hasado, because a person is like the tree in the field. We give off an aura. Is the aura a pleasant aura? Is it one that people say, oh boy, guy walks into the room, oh, here he is again, a pain in the neck, all of that stuff. Where are we? And that starts early on. But as I said before in the beginning, that the child is only a metaphor for all of us. It doesn't matter, because we're all children and we all have to restart relearning and redoing all of these things. Again, I say, if you had two solid and great parents and they started you off and they nurtured you, it's a lot easier, because some things come second nature. We say, some things come natural. Take, some people have just a natural ability to make people feel good. I don't believe that for 1 second. It's a natural ability. What it is it's the training and making that decision over again and seeing it done in your home. So if your home was an open home and your father extended himself to strangers and pulled strangers into the house, what you as a child saw was a nurturing type of an environment in your house, then, sure, then it's easy. Then it's easy. And you know what? Sometimes you wonder at people, you look at people and you say, you know what? I wonder how they got that way. And then you meet their parents and right away everything clicks. Right away everything clicks. I mean, I don't mean to belabor this point, but since I've been talking about, I just want to say something. I mean, I want to take, for example, one of our oldest members here, Paula. Okay, Paula, as we all know, Paula's been at the show day one and everything, and she's committed to the show and do all of these things and everything. And we know all the wonderful things that she does for everybody. And I don't want to. This is not a testimonial to her. It's not a testimonial to her. But I just want to bring a point up. So you say, of course, listen, this comes second nature to her. This is what she is. She just happens to be a nice person. Paula's a nice person, a pleasant person to be around, and very great. Okay. A few weeks ago, my wife had her father passed away, and then 3 weeks later, mother passed away. And one day I get a letter. We got a letter from Paula's mother, which Hani shared with me. And then all of a sudden, it started to click into my mind. Then things started to fall into place. That Paula is not an apple that fell from the tree out of nowhere. But if you see the letter that Paula's mother wrote, both after the death of Hani's mother and the death of Hani's father, you see where someone come from. Now you see where the origin is. And it's not something that happens out of the clear blue sky that one day we open this up. And everybody's like that, and everybody in this room, but I just brought that up because it's still fresh in my mind. It's still, in my mind to read that letter. And again, Mrs. Savage, who was Paula's mother, lives in Manchester. We meet them here once or twice a year. Over the time, we met them maybe a dozen times, maybe, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. They're not from the people here in the show that we see every week. But the empathy that she showed in the letter to my wife was so rich, so rich and meaningful that things then started to fall into place. And it's like a gear, like in a lock, you begin to see things happen. And I bring that up as an example because that's true about every single person. I say about every single person, when you see something, you see somebody do something great, I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, it's because they were trained to do this. Now, of course, some people grew up in terrible circumstances and were able to rise up and change and throw off the mantle. Those are the exceptions to the rules. A kid that grew up with a methamphetamine mother and an absentee father, and he grew up and he struggled and he went to college and he became a physician and he raises his children. This guy deserves a Nobel Prize. He's the true hero of it all. But how many? Let's be honest. That is a struggle against a wave. It's like running up a wall of water. 95% of the time, you see somebody standing up there and doing something good. It's because they saw somewhere back that either their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents were the ones that influenced them early on. Our great-grandparents are passed on. For many of us, our grandparents have passed on, and for many of us, our parents have passed on. We need to be those examples to our children. We need to be those examples to not only to our children, to ourselves, and our families, and our neighbors, and our community. Thank you very much. All right. Does anybody have any questions here? But that's, no questions. After this, okay. They don't have any questions, Paul. What's with this group here? Jews never ask any questions. That's exactly the opposite of the stereotype. It's usually the Gentiles that never ask any questions. It's the Jews that, have, Rabbi! No. All right. Okay. Next week we'll take it one step further. And I'll be on time next week. Sorry about today.